Press the button, my friend.
The Out of Bounds Show is live from the Whiskey 61 Lounge in the Bank Plus studio.
Check it out.
According to their head coach, Mississippi State baseball was embarrassed. It was an embarrassing loss last night against La Monroe. And what's crazy is they got what they wanted from Bradley Lofton. I mean, that was the buzz going into the game, and yet they were humiliated and blown out in the game. Hail State Baseball Insider, 247 Sports, the Boneyard Podcast. Steve Robertson jumps on late minute. Thanks to Steve for doing this. He joins us on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. Steve, that was, according to the head coach, embarrassing. What's your takeaway from last night?
Oh, I agree with Coach Lamonis completely. I mean, it was an embarrassing performance, and I don't know what's more embarrassing. The lack of offense against midweek pitching from Louisiana Monroe. I mean, the starter for ULM had never pitched in a Division I baseball game before, and he looked like Greg Maddox. And you look up into what, 6th, 7th inning, State's got one hit, and that happened in the first inning. They weren't even barreling balls up, and that was the thing over the weekend. You scored 33 runs, you hit 371 as a team, you had some really loud outs. I thought State got behind in the ball game, and I thought State quit. And listen, what's abundantly clear at this point, Bo, is the young guys, the Loftons, the Sinjays, and you can now throw Evan Sierra in there. The most talented pitchers on this team are the young guys. And I don't know if you don't just go ahead and take your lumps and go with those guys because, listen, Tyler Davis comes in from VCU. Is supposed to be a really good pitcher, and this is a guy that's won at the Division I level. And he's had 2 appearances now and really hadn't looked good in either one. And, so what do you do, if you're Chris Simonis? And I asked him last night, basically, I said, how tempting is it to just run with the young guys, maybe even before they're ready? And he said, maybe I think it's going to get to that, isn't it?
Okay, so they got what they wanted out of Lofton. They seem to be still really scuffling and shuffling post Tanner Allen. Not many programs go back to back with Jake Mangum and Tanner Allen. It just doesn't happen, okay? And I get it. That's hard you don't just find that on every corner or every high school block when these guys are recruiting. But it's going to take some metal and some blank you, too, I think, in the locker room. Do you agree?
Oh, I do. And, in 2020, that was one of the things that we talked about. So this is a team that's devoid of leadership. That's a team that had TA and Rowdy. There's the development piece in that, too, because, TA, well, he absolutely is an alpha player. He didn't really have that alpha persona in the locker room, I think, because you kind of deferred to Jake, because Jake was the guy and everybody knew it, And so there was, the comfort level of Jake that's made everybody better. I think TA and especially Rowdy kind of struggled with that in 2020. But the next thing you know, it's like, hey, this is it. And I remember the weekend of, playing Ole Miss that Sunday, the deciding game. TA says as soon as he wakes up, he's got a message from Jake. It's like, hey, we don't lose to these guys. We don't lose to these guys. You got to take charge of that locker room. And so, somebody else has got to step up. That's one thing that I hear, sometimes in post game. Well, we don't have to have a leader. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. You have to have the alpha. You've got to have a guy whose voice means more in the clubhouse than anybody else's.
And it's got to be natural, right? I mean, the coaches can't go into the locker room and tell the kid you're the alpha.
Absolutely, because it's a credibility thing. I mean, you couldn't just like, okay, well, Blake, walk in here and tell these guys what to do. I mean, that's just not how it works. It's got to be a guy that they have, number one, respect for, and number two, that they know that when this guy speaks, his words are gonna match his deeds. And I think State's been really blessed with that over the years. And I'm not trying to suggest Luke Hancock is not doing its best to be that guy. But I think what you need is you've got to have that one guy that comes up late in the ball game and wins the ball game for you, and then the guys will follow him.
Steve Robertson, genespage.com on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. Is it time to be concerned or to punch the panic button for Hail State baseball fans in the program?
Well, it's obviously time to be concerned. That's not to say that things are about to run off the rails. I think panic in 4 games in it's probably there's some silliness with it. As embarrassing as last night was, and it was. And I mean, you're sitting there, and I was even texting with my wife. I said, if I was a fan watching on TV, I would have already turned this off. If I was a fan here at the ballpark, I would have already left. It's just you don't lose those games that way, and that was the most disappointing thing. But when 2016 State lost to Eastern Kentucky and Oral Robertson back-to-back days, and they ended up winning the SEC. I'm not projecting State's going to win the SEC. I'm just telling you things can change. It is a long season, and I do think some pieces are emerging on the pitching side that they're going to be able to trust. They're also finding out who they can't trust, and that's really what's going to determine the season. And I think things will be a lot more offensive today after what happened yesterday, because they shut State down. And I knew when they were talking about the soft toss and lefty, I told Mike Nemeth, I said, it's going to be a bit of a struggle for 5 or 6 innings. Our fans are going to be freaking out. Little bit I know the ball game we were going to get ultimately.
Why can some other teams in the SEC hit a soft tossing lefty? I mean, this has been going on even when they were good 4 years ago, Steve.
Well, most don't. Most don't. But, yeah, there are some teams out there that, eventually they'll get to you. I mean, that's just kind of the reality of life. I mean, you don't see that many left-handers, period. And then when you've got a guy that can change speeds, and I thought the guy was really good, we were kind of looking up, hey, where's this kid from? Yeah, he's from Barton Community College. Oh, he's from Oklahoma City. It's like you begin to ask yourself, how does a guy like this, run under the radar? But the bottom line is, I don't know if State showed up overconfident. And if you're this team after what you went through last year, you cannot show up at the ballpark taking anybody for granted. No. And last night proves that.
I never thought Lamonis and the staff, and again, you're right, they could rip off 8 in a row. I don't think the 2016 comparison's really valid, but I get where you're going, because I just don't think you have Rooker, Mangum, Dakota, and several other guys. But I never thought Lamonis and the staff would be in this situation where they're about to rely on 4 to 5 really, really young arms, Steve, to try to get to 34 and 25. Yeah, 34 wins. I just never thought that they would be in this situation. Your thoughts?
I think that's a fair assessment. The one thing I will say about the 2016 season, just to kind of defend my point, John Cohen was coaching for his job in 16. I mean, 15 was just like last year. You missed Hoover. You missed the tournament. You weren't competitive down the stretch. And you had Dakota Hudson step up. The difference was Dakota Hudson had been in your program. Austin Sexton had been in your program. And then Pilkington shows up as a young guy, takes over late. And so you needed everything to go right. But of course, you have the new addition of Kruger and Nathaniel Lowe. Of course, those guys ended up being, making the show.
MLB,
but,
yeah.
Yeah. And so I don't see that coming, obviously. But the question, and I've asked this last year, and I'll just put it out there as it is. How does Mississippi State baseball get to a point that you don't have a couple of established starters? I mean, how does that happen? Right? And it's been that way, for a few years. And I know the portal's a new thing, everything else, but I just don't understand how Mississippi State baseball is just like you said, is having to be so reliant on first-year players from the high school ranks to come in and put a pitching staff together. I mean, that just should never be. I mean, not at Mississippi State.
I couldn't agree more. And look, this is nothing against Cade Smith, because you are who you are. I'm not convinced. I know he's not a Friday night guy right now. I'm not convinced he's a dominant Saturday night guy. I mean, you may be working with 3 or 4 Sunday guys for your rotation on the weekends, depending what Lofton and Sinjay do. But that's a lot of pressure on true freshmen. All right, Steve, thanks for jumping in on late notice. Appreciate it.
Sure. Take care.
GenesPage.com, the Boneyard Podcast. He joined us on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. Bundle your car and home and save with your local Farm Bureau Insurance agent. And knowing what they do and how they do it, well, they'll make you sleep better. We're live in the Bank Plus studio, and we want you sleeping on a purple mattress from Muskelly Sleep Stores or Muskelly Furniture. Tom Luganbill coming up next. 24 minutes of SEC and college football. Tom Luganbill, national college football analyst with ESPN.